The forest didn't whisper tonight, it screamed. Rain hammered through the branches like fists, each drop sharp enough to sting bare skin. The old pines groaned under the weight of the storm, bending low as if trying to shelter the small figure stumbling beneath them. Mud clung to her boots, pulling at her steps, swallowing her footprints before the next one even landed, as though the earth itself was trying to erase her trail, hide her from what chased her. But it wasn't fast enough. Elara pushed forward with a raw, breathless desperation, her arms wrapped tight around the trembling little girl pressed to her chest. Lumi's small fingers clutched the fabric of her mother's torn shirt, knuckles white, head buried against Elara's shoulder. The child's soft whimper vanished into the roar of the storm, but Elara felt it, felt every shudder, every tiny breath, every ounce of trust the girl had left in her. The trust she couldn't afford to break. Not tonight. Behind them, something growled. It wasn't the growl of a common wolf, no, this one carried that low, scraping rumble that vibrated along the spine, the kind that belonged to creatures who walked on two legs until they decided not to. Bones cracked. Tendons snapped. The forest held its breath as the hunters shifted, closing in on the scent of the forbidden. Her scent. Elara didn't look back. She didn't dare. The metallic tang of shifting wolves drifted through the rain, bringing with it the unmistakable smell of blood and hunger. They were close enough now for her to feel the tremors of their paws striking the ground. Close enough for her to hear their breathing, hot, eager, merciless. She adjusted her grip on Lumi, ignoring the sharp stab of pain slicing through her side. The wound burned, hot, wet, pulsing silver beneath her palm. She knew what it meant. She'd known from the moment those claws tore into her. The hunters had seen the shimmer in her blood. The hunters had seen the shimmer in her blood. They'd realized what she was. What she carried. And that meant they would chase her until she collapsed from exhaustion or until they dragged her back in chains. She bit down on a cry as another bolt of pain shot through her, nearly buckling her knees. The edges of her vision flickered in and out, darkness tugging at her like greedy fingers. But she forced herself upright. Lumi's fragile body pressed against her gave her enough strength to keep going. Enough to take one more step. And another. And another. Lightning cracked across the sky, tearing open the darkness for a heartbeat. In that flash, she saw everything she'd been trying to outrun. Her pack turning their backs. Their fear. Their whispers, the silver flame is a curse. Destroy her before she destroys us. Her exile. Her pregnancy. Her daughter born with eyes too bright, too knowing. Her life spent hiding, always moving, always praying that the truth wouldn't catch up. Thunder followed the lightning, a deep, bone-rattling boom that shook the forest floor beneath her feet. Elara staggered, clutching Lumi even tighter. The ground felt unstable, as if mirroring the chaos inside her, the guilt, the terror, the love fierce enough to tear her in half. Another growl, closer this time. She tasted the fear in her mouth, sharp and bitter. She tried to push her legs faster, but they felt heavy, unresponsive, numb with cold and exhaustion. Lumi's hair, soaked through by the storm, brushed against Elara's neck. For a moment, the warmth of that small touch nearly undid her. She wanted to stop. To rest. Just for a moment. But resting meant dying. Branches whipped across her face. Brambles snagged her clothes, ripping thin lines into her skin. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps that barely made it past her lips. The storm held through the trees, swallowing every sound that wasn't the pounding of her heart. And then, her palms flickered. Just for a second, but long enough. A faint silver glow danced across her skin, pulsing like a heartbeat of its own. She sucked in a sharp breath and clenched her fists, forcing the light to die. Not here. Not now. Not with Lumi watching. If she let her power slip free, even for a heartbeat, the hunters wouldn't be the only danger. The entire forest would come alive, called by the heat of her flames. And she couldn't risk it, not when the only thing more dangerous than being hunted was being found. The trees thinned ahead. A clearing. Unfamiliar land, territory she'd never stepped into before. Which meant one of two things. Safety. Or something worse. Her lungs burned. Her legs finally gave way beneath her. She stumbled out of the tree line, dropping to her knees as mud splashed around her. Lumi cried out softly, her voice barely audible over the storm. Elara wrapped a protective arm around her daughter and tried to stand again, but her body wouldn't obey. She was past her limit. Lightning flashed again. And in that moment, there they were. A pair of glowing eyes, hovering in the darkness of the clearing. Not hunter's eyes. Not wolf eyes either. These were something else, something older, heavier, watching her with an intensity that felt like pressure on her chest. She couldn't breathe under the weight of that gaze. It was as though the creature, no, the man, could see straight through her skin to the mark burned into her very soul. Her heart stuttered. Lumi whimpered. The eyes stepped closer. The storm quieted, not fully, but enough for the night to hold a tight, trembling pause. Rain softened around them. The world seemed to narrow into a single, breathless moment. Elara forced her trembling voice to whisper only one thought, one desperate truth. This is it. This is where everything changes. And if you want to survive this night with her, if you want to know how the storm ends, who those eyes belong to, and what they see when they look at her, stay close. Stay very close. And subscribe to Moonlight Desires. Because the real story begins right here. At the edge of the unknown. With a woman on her knees, a child in her arms. And a pair of eyes waiting for her in the dark. The eyes didn't blink. They simply watched, steady, unhurried, as though weighing the shape of her fear. Elara tried to shift backward, but her body refused to cooperate. The mud beneath her knees felt cold enough to numb bone. Lumi trembled in her arms, barely breathing, tiny fingers digging into the soaked fabric near Elara's collarbone. The storm hissed through the clearing, softer now, but still sharp enough to sting. Then, the shape behind the eyes stepped forward. At first it was only a shadow moving through shadows. But as lightning split the sky again, the silhouette sharpened, tall, broad-shouldered, built with the quiet, devastating strength of someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. His presence alone bent the air around him. Everything near him seemed to still, branches, rain, wind, even the earth settled as if recognizing him. A figure carved out of night and thunder. A man who carried command the way others carried breath. The Alpha King Kael. He stepped into the clearing fully, rain sliding down the long dark strands of his hair, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. Every instinct in Elara's body screamed for her to run, but she couldn't move, not because of fear, but because something in his gaze held her in place. Not with force. Not with power. With recognition. Elara, he said, voice low enough that it almost vanished beneath the storm. Why are you running? The sound of her name in his mouth hit her like another wound. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Kael's eyes flicked over her, her torn clothes, the way her left arm wrapped protectively around the child, the silver glint of her blood leaking onto the ground. His jaw tightened again, but this time there was something beneath it. Something like disbelief. Or something sharper. Behind him, shadows shifted. Two wolves stepped out of the trees, their fur soaked, their eyes fixed on Elara and Lumi. They weren't just wolves, they were men in half-shift, prepared to kill, prepared to drag her back, prepared to follow whatever command their alpha gave. One of them growled, low and ready. Kael didn't look at them. He didn't need to. Stand down. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, ancient, absolute. The wolves immediately lowered their heads, growls cut off mid-breath. One began to step closer anyway, perhaps out of panic, or instinct, or fear of what she was. Kael's head turned toward him slowly. That was all it took. The wolf froze, ears flattening, tail dropping. No further defiance. Kael returned his attention to her, and in that moment the storm dimmed again, the world narrowing until it felt like there were only three of them in existence, a wounded woman, a frightened child, and a king who had every reason to walk away, but didn't. He crouched, closing the distance between them with deliberate slowness, like approaching something dangerous that might explode with the wrong touch. For a heartbeat, Elara thought he might reach for her, maybe to steady her, maybe to seize her. Instead, his gaze dropped to her side. The wound. The shimmering silver tracking through the blood. His breath faltered, not fully, just enough for her to hear the tiny break in rhythm. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. But the question wasn't about the cut. It was about the color of the blood. The truth it betrayed. Elara shifted back, instinctively pulling Lumi behind her as much as her body allowed. Lumi stirred, her cheek pressing against Elara's shoulder, her small form radiating warmth despite the cold. Kael's gaze drifted to the child. His entire body stilled. Lumi, sensing eyes on her, peeked up, not scared, not hiding. Just watching him back. Big, bright eyes blinking calmly, reflecting the silver flashes of the storm overhead. Kael didn't touch her at first. He just held her gaze like he was trying to decipher a language only she spoke. Finally, he reached out, slowly, deliberately, as though he was touching a fragile, dangerous secret. His fingers brushed her forearm. Lumi tilted her head, curious and unbothered, the innocence in her expression so at odds with the fear suffocating the clearing that Kael's features shifted, just for a moment. A quick flicker of something deep and old and aching. But Elara wasn't calm. Her breath came faster. Her pulse thudded in her throat. "Don't touch her." Her voice was weak, ragged, but the meaning hit with enough force that even the storm seemed to pull back for a second. Kael lifted his gaze to her again. He didn't remove his hand. He didn't tighten it either. He simply whispered, "I'm not here to hurt you." The words were quiet, but there was something underneath them. Attention. A history. The kind you didn't speak aloud but felt with every bone. Elara tried to push him away, weak but determined. The moment she moved, pain flared up her side like a spark catching dry leaves. Her arm trembled violently, and she nearly dropped Lumi. Kael moved instantly, not grabbing her, but steadying her back with one hand, catching Lumi with the other. His touch was gentle, but the muscles in his jaw clenched like he was forcing himself to stay composed. "Elara, stop," he murmured. "You're going to pass out." She tried to shove him again. She hated that her body leaned into his strength when it should have recoiled. She hated that her heartbeat calmed just a little when his hand steadied her. And she hated that he noticed. He looked at her as if seeing something he hadn't expected to find, something far more complex than fear or determination. Something he wasn't prepared for. His gaze dropped once more to her wound. "You're bleeding silver," he said, almost to himself. The words weren't surprise. They were confirmation. He knew. He understood exactly what she was, and what Lumi might be. The rain softened again. Thunder rolled lazily in the distance. The forest settled into a strange, fragile quiet, as if suspended in the breath between danger and revelation. Elara's strength finally gave out. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled completely. Kael moved before she fell, catching her with an ease that sent a shock down her spine. He lifted Lumi first, securing the child against his chest with a protectiveness that looked dangerously natural. Then he swept Elara into his arms, her weight nothing in his grasp. She wanted to fight. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him to put her down. But her voice was fading, slipping under the weight of exhaustion. Kael glanced down at them both, the woman barely conscious and the child watching him with unblinking trust. His expression shifted again, something cracking beneath the surface. Not fear. Not anger. Something far more complicated. He turned toward the forest, his wolves falling into stride behind him. The storm opened a path as he walked, rain thinning, wind softening, as though the night itself recognized its king. Elara's head rested weakly against his chest. Lumi's small hand reached up, curling into the fabric of his shirt as if she belonged there. Kael exhaled slowly, almost painfully. Why now? He whispered, more to the sky than to either of them. Why bring her back to me now, Moon? And with that, he carried them both deeper into the storm. Kael moved through the forest with the weight of a storm in his steps, but the forest no longer fought him. Branches that had torn at Elara's skin bent aside. Wind softened into a low murmur. Even the rain, relentless moments before, thinned into a pale mist that clung to the ground like breath. It wasn't mercy. It was recognition. The land knew its Alpha, knew the blood he carried, knew the destiny he'd tried his whole life to outrun. Held against his chest, Elara drifted in and out of consciousness, suspended between waking pain and the dark pull of memory. Lumi, cradled securely against Kael's shoulder, watched the world pass with wide, unblinking eyes, her tiny hand still clinging to his shirt as if she had done so 1,000 times. But Elara, she was sinking. The warmth of Kael's body fought her exhaustion, but the past beat harder. Memories rose like waves, crashing one after another, refusing to let her rest. The forest faded. Kael's heartbeat dissolved. And she was somewhere else, someone else. The night of her exile. It rushed back with such force that her body tensed even in Kael's arms. She could feel the cold dirt beneath her bare feet, the circle of hostile faces around her, the choking scent of smoke and judgment. She saw her former Alpha, stern, unyielding, standing above her with the pack behind him. Your blood is a threat, he had declared. Your flame will swallow us whole. She remembered the sting of those words. Not because she believed them, but because every eye in the pack, wolves she grew up beside, trained with, laughed with, looked at her as though she had already turned into a monster. She remembered lifting her hands to show they were empty. She remembered the faint glow pulsing beneath her skin, a glow she couldn't control. And she remembered the way the pack recoiled. The night burned itself into her bones, the night she realized that fear could be louder than truth, and that bloodlines carried sins she had never asked to inherit. A wave of shame struck her as she relived it. Even now, years later, she could feel it, the sting of abandonment, the humiliation of being cast out by the very people she once would have died for. But that wasn't the worst memory. The worst came next. The night she learned she was pregnant. It hadn't been romantic. It hadn't been planned. It had been a moment of vulnerability, a moment marked by grief and confusion after her exile, a night she never meant to share with anyone. And when she realized a life was growing inside her, her heart had split in two, terror on one side, fierce, protective love on the other. She remembered sitting alone in a tiny abandoned cabin deep in the mountains, hands trembling over her stomach. The world outside had been silent. Inside, she'd felt her entire existence shift. She whispered to the life forming within her. I'll keep you safe. No matter what it costs. And she meant it. She fled deeper into the wilds, away from packs, away from politics, away from anyone who could sense the unusual spark in the child she carried. Because she knew the truth, if anyone discovered Lumi's bloodline, they'd try to claim her. Use her. Control her. Or destroy her. The silver flame wasn't just magic. It was lineage. It was inheritance. It was a promise and a curse bound together. Only a handful in the world had ever wielded it. Every one of them changed the fate of whole packs, sometimes for good, sometimes for devastation. Entire wars had been waged over those with her gift. Entire families had been erased for carrying it. Elara knew that history well. Her own ancestors were proof. The silver flame could heal wounds no other magic could touch. And it could level entire strongholds when pushed beyond control. That duality was why she'd been marked dangerous before she ever did a thing wrong. That duality was why she ran. And Kael. Kael was the one man on Earth who would understand exactly what Lumi was. Because deep down, despite everything, despite the storm and the years and the silence between them, Elara knew the truth she'd never dared speak. Lumi carried his blood too. Her breath hitched, sharp enough to pull her closer to waking. But the memories didn't release her yet. They shifted again, this time to the single moment she'd spent years trying to bury. The night she and Kael had crossed paths long ago. She remembered how it started, a late patrol, a strange quiet in the woods, an inexplicable warmth spreading through her chest when she sensed someone nearby. She remembered turning around and seeing him standing there, Kael, younger but already carrying the weight of command in his posture, already marked by a destiny he hadn't chosen. They shouldn't have spoken. They shouldn't have lingered. But they did. That night had been marked by stolen glances, unspoken questions, and the kind of pull that didn't come from the moon or the bond or prophecy, just two people who weren't supposed to care, but did anyway. She remembered the way he'd watched her as though trying to understand something he'd never seen in anyone else. She remembered the warmth of his breath ghosting over her cheek. And she remembered the kiss, brief, fierce, undeniable. A moment that changed everything. A moment that ended as quickly as it began. Because the next morning, word of her lineage spread. And Kael had done nothing to stop the exile that followed. Elara had spent years telling herself that the kiss meant nothing. That she imagined the way he held her. That she imagined the softness in his eyes. That the child growing inside her could not possibly be his. But now, in the safety of his arms, with Lumi tucked against his chest like she belonged there, memories and truth tangled together, refusing to separate. Her heart clenched painfully. Kael's steps slowed as he sensed her stirring. His grip adjusted, gentle, secure. He didn't speak, but something in the way he held her made it clear he felt every tremor in her body, every soft exhale, every trace of pain she tried to hide. Elara drifted deeper again, sinking into the mix of longing and fear she'd spent years avoiding. Kael's presence stirred memories she'd locked so tightly they'd warped inside her. Memories of a man who wasn't yet the Alpha King, who wasn't weighed down by prophecy, who wasn't surrounded by soldiers and expectations, just a man who looked at her like she wasn't a curse. But that man stood above her pack while they cast her out. That man stayed silent when she begged for a chance to explain. And now he held her again, as though she hadn't become a ghost in his story. The forest faded from around her mind, but the ache remained. The ache of what she'd lost. The ache of what she feared. The ache of what she could never allow him to know. She vowed long ago that Lumi would never be found. Especially by the man whose blood might run through her veins. But here they were. And the truth hung between them like lightning waiting to strike. Elara felt a hot, dizzy wave of panic. Her heart thrummed harder, her body stirring weakly as if trying to wake, trying to escape the arms that were both familiar and dangerous. Kael slowed again. His voice brushed against the edges of her fading awareness. Elara, stay with me. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The memories pulled her under one last time, deeper and darker, reminding her exactly who she was. A woman cast out. A mother hiding a legacy the world would kill for. A bearer of a power that could save or ruin everything she touched. And she was now in the arms of the one man who could unravel all of her carefully laid silence with a single question. Who she really was a truth she could no longer outrun. Kael crossed into the grove with the caution of a man stepping onto holy ground. The storm that chased them through the forest died at the boundary, retreating as if the air itself commanded silence. The sacred wolfstone grove rose before him, vast, ancient, and humming with the soft blue sheen of lunar magic that clung to every blade of grass. Even the air felt thicker here, as though centuries of power drifted through it in slow, deliberate breaths. Elara lay limp in his arms, her damp hair clinging to his forearm, her breath shallow but steady. Lumi, still half awake and blinking, nestled against his chest as though this strange sanctuary belonged to her. And perhaps, in some buried truth of fate, it did. The wolfstone stood at the center of the clearing, a massive pillar of marble-veined rock carved long before any living wolf had drawn breath. Symbols spiraled up its surface, old runes that told stories no pack dared speak aloud. It glowed faintly whenever the moon rose, but tonight it pulsed. At first Kael thought it was just the storm playing tricks on his vision. But as he stepped closer, the pulse sharpened, slow, heavy thumps that matched the rhythm of a sleeping heart. The moment Elara's bare foot brushed the edge of the moss-covered stone, the entire grove exhaled. Blue light rolled outward in a single ripple. The grass swayed. The runes flared bright enough to cast shadows. Kael's arms tightened around her instinctively. The grove recognized her. He drew in a breath he didn't want to need. The stories he'd heard as a child, tales whispered by elders, dismissed as superstition, pressed into the back of his mind. Stories of a marked one. A wolf born with a flame that could split kingdoms or unite them. A wolf destined to either crown or destroy the next Alpha King. Stories he never believed. Not until this moment. Not until the stone glowed like it had been waiting for her. Kael lowered Elara gently onto the moss, his movements controlled, almost reverent. Lumi reached for her mother with a small sound, but Kael steadied the child with a warm hand, whispering low enough that only she could hear it. "She's strong. She'll wake soon." Lumi's fingers curled around his thumb, trusting, unafraid. It was that trust that sent a ripple through him, something unsettling and familiar. Something he wasn't ready to name. The wolfstone pulsed again. Light spread beneath Elara's body like a living tide, forming delicate lines under her spine, her palms, her throat, lines that sparked as if drawing breath from her very skin. Kael forced himself not to step back. Every instinct screamed at him to understand, to solve, to claim control before control shattered entirely. Because this wasn't coincidence. This wasn't accident. This was prophecy unfolding right in front of him. He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Her skin was cool, but energy flickered just beneath the surface, the same dangerous silver fire he had glimpsed only once, years ago, when she didn't know he was watching. "Elara," Kael whispered, voice caught between fear and awe. "What are you?" Her body jerked. Her back arched, breath punching out of her chest as though dragged from drowning. Her eyes snapped open, not the soft brown he remembered, but a shaken mixture of fear, confusion, and something else, something ancient. Then the vision hit. She didn't scream, but her entire body tensed so violently that Lumi whimpered and reached for her again. Kael caught the girl protectively, but his gaze stayed locked on Elara. Her pupils blew wide. Her hands clenched. Her breath fractured into ragged edges. And through her eyes, just for a heartbeat, Kael saw what she saw. A crown burning gold and white, flames licking up its sides until it melted into molten light. A child with luminescent eyes, glowing brighter than the moon itself, standing in the ruins of a throne shattered down the middle. The air around that child hummed with silver flame, wild, uncontrolled, yet pulsing with impossible power. Then darkness. Cold. Silence broken only by the distant howl of a wounded wolf. Elara shot upright, gasping so hard she nearly folded over. The light beneath her extinguished instantly, recoiling like it had touched something it wasn't ready for. Kael, steadying her with both hands, felt the tremor running through her bones. She pushed him away. Her voice cracked. "No," she whispered. "I am not this. I am nobody's prophecy." Her denial slammed into him with more force than any physical blow. Not because she rejected destiny, but because she truly believed she didn't deserve one. Her eyes darted from the wolfstone to Kael to her child, panic tearing at the edges of her composure. "Elara," Kael said quietly, "the grove responded to you. The stone. It responds to danger," she snapped, though the tremble in her throat betrayed her. "I did not ask for this. I did not want any of this." Kael steadied her face. Rainwater clung to her lashes. Her cheeks flushed with fear and exhaustion. Her hands trembled as though the vision was still vibrating through her. "It doesn't matter what you want," he said softly. "Prophecy doesn't bend to preference." Her gaze hardened. "Then I want no part of it." Her voice wasn't loud, but something in it shook the air between them. A wounded defiance. A plea buried inside a warning. She wasn't running from destiny for herself, she was running for the tiny girl clutching his shirt, nestling her face into his chest as if she had always known him. Kael drew a slow breath. "Elara, that vision. The child. The flame. The broken throne. His voice lowered, steadier than he felt. It wasn't just about you. Her body stiffened. Her jaw locked. Her breath hitched in a way that told him she already knew exactly what he was going to say. It was about her. Lumi lifted her head, blinking her large, gentle eyes. She reached for her mother's hand, as though sensing the weight of the words settling over the grove like fog. No, Elara's voice fractured. She will not be pulled into this. She is my daughter, Kael. Mine. And she will not be a symbol. She will not be a weapon. Kael felt the words like claws against his ribs. Elara, he said carefully, the prophecy. Prophecies twist everything they touch, she whispered, voice fraying. I won't let them twist her. Kael's throat tightened, not in anger, but in a rare, unwelcome ache. He understood her fear. He understood the instinct to protect a child from a story they never asked to be part of. But he also understood something she refused to see. Fate had just marked Lumi as the center of a storm powerful enough to reshape their entire world. The grove pulsed again, softer this time, as though it was listening. Kael looked at the child in his arms, then at the woman kneeling before him, trembling in the glow of ancient runes. Elara, he murmured, your destiny and mine, they just collided. And we won't be able to walk away from this. Not anymore. Her breath faltered. Her shoulders tensed. And for the first time since he found her bleeding in the storm, she looked at him not with fear or anger, but with something rawer, deeper, and infinitely more dangerous. Recognition. She whispered, voice barely a thread. This is only the beginning, isn't it? Kael held her gaze, the truth settling heavy between them as the wolfstone dimmed to a quiet, knowing hum. Yes, he said. The beginning of something neither of us can stop. The grove did not grant them even a minute of peace. The final echo of Kael's words had barely faded when the first snarl ripped through the trees, low, guttural, rolling with the promise of blood. Lumi froze. Elara's breath hitched. Kael rose instantly, body coiled, gaze snapping toward the shadows gathering at the edge of the grove. They weren't shadows. They were wolves. Dozens. Armor-clad forms pierced the tree-line, shifting mid-step, bones cracking as fur dissolved into skin. Warriors, Kael's warriors, emerged with weapons drawn, faces hard, eyes colder than the night. And behind them came the others. The rival faction. Those wolves did not shift. They prowled the perimeter with their jaws exposed, their red-tinted eyes locked on Elara as if she were prey already pinned beneath their claws. The grove pulsed once, uneasy, warning, but the intruders did not flinch. A voice cut through the clearing. There, a general barked, pointing a shaking blade toward Elara. The cursed flame. The danger the elders foretold. Another voice piled on, sharper, hungrier. She carries the blood that ruined the old throne. A third, colder still. And the child. Look at her. She has the mark. Kael's stance shifted immediately, stepping in front of Elara and Lumi without hesitation. But even he couldn't ignore the wave of doubt rippling through his own people. Their eyes flicked between him and the glowing runes beneath Elara's knees. Between loyalty and fear. Between the Alpha they served and the woman the stories warned them about. Elara rose slowly, arms wrapped around Lumi as if her own bones were a shield. Her heartbeat thudded loud enough Kael could feel it against the earth. Fear was there, raw and trembling, but beneath it simmered something stronger. Resolve. When the next accusation struck the air. She will burn the kingdom to ash. Elara's jaw tightened. Kael's lip curled into a lethal snarl. Stand down. But the rival faction ignored the command. Their leader stepped forward, a massive wolf, eyes gleaming with fanatic conviction. You bring doom into sacred ground, Kael. You stand beside a threat born of corruption. She should be destroyed before the prophecy devours us all. Lumi whimpered into her mother's shoulder, and something in Elara snapped. A soft, dangerous snap. Kael saw it too late, the moment her fear tilted into instinct. The moment her protective love became a blade. Silver light flickered across her palms. It wasn't the wild blaze he had seen years ago, nor the overwhelming force the grove awakened moments before. This was thin, controlled, almost gentle, a warning instead of an attack. But even that was enough. The warriors jerked backward. The rival wolves growled, hair rising in violent arcs along their spines. The council members who had followed Kael to the grove whispered among themselves, voices sharp with panic. "See," one hissed. "She can't control it." "She'll ignite the crown," another spat. "She'll choose flame over peace." Kael rounded on them, fury vibrating through every muscle. "She protected her child. You would have done the same." But the council wasn't listening. Fear made people deaf. The eldest counselor stepped forward, staff thudding against the earth, his voice trembling not with age but outrage. "Kael, you are the Alpha King. This grove is your charge. Your kingdom is your oath. And now you must choose." He pointed the staff at Elara. "Choose your kingdom, or that woman." The grove went painfully silent. Kael did not move. Elara's breath caught. Lumi clung to her, sensing the sudden rupture in the air. Kael's warriors looked to him with desperate eyes, begging silently for clarity, for stability, for anything that could ease the terror clawing at them. Kael opened his mouth. But Elara backed away. Not fast. Not loudly. Just a single step. A soft crunch of moss under her heel. Kael turned toward her with something like horror on his face, because he understood that sound more clearly than any threat around them. It was her surrender. Her surrender to fear. To destiny. To the belief that she was, and always would be, a danger to everything good that came near her. "Elara. Don't," she whispered. Not angry. Not cold. Just, breaking. "Kael, don't make promises you'll regret. Your people need you. They always have." He stepped toward her anyway. "I'm not letting you walk out of this grove alone." Her grip tightened around Lumi. "You're not supposed to follow me. You were never meant to." "Elara." But she shook her head, cutting him off with a trembling breath. "You saw what the vision held. You saw what I could unleash. If I stay, you lose everything you built. Everything you swore to protect. I won't be the reason your kingdom falls." Her voice shook harder at the end, but she didn't let the tears fall. She didn't dare. She needed to stay strong long enough to do the one thing she hated most. Leave him again. Her power flickered at her palms, tiny sparks of silver dancing at her fingertips, illuminating the fear and determination etched across her face. The rival wolves recoiled instinctively. "Elara," Kael said, lower now, almost pleading, "don't run." Her eyes lifted to him, eyes full of years of pain, memory, and the echo of something he once almost claimed. "I have to," she whispered. "For her." A heartbreaking truth pulsed beneath her words. "And for you." Kael took a step forward. Elara stepped back. The air between them pulled like a thread stretching to its final strain. Then she turned. Just once, to press a kiss to Lumi's forehead. And then fully, to face the shadowed path beyond the grove. Kael reached for her. But she was already moving. Slow at first, then faster. Then gone. A blur of determination disappearing past the tree line, silver dust shimmering faintly in her wake. The rival faction shouted after her, but none dared cross the rune-lit boundary. The grove seemed to reject their pursuit, its blue glow rising higher as if guarding her escape. Kael didn't chase. Not because he didn't want to. But because his council blocked his path, dropping to one knee in a gesture of submission that felt like a chain slipping around his throat. "My king," the elder said, voice low. "You must not follow. You must protect the realm." Kael's fists clenched so hard the bones cracked. He stared into the darkness where she vanished, his breath uneven, his pulse shaking his ribs, his instincts screaming at him to run after her until the earth ended. Duty anchored him. Desire tore him apart. And caught between both, Kael stood at the center of the glowing grove, unable to move, unable to breathe, watching the woman he couldn't stop wanting slip beyond his reach once again. The night held still. The prophecy pulsed. And the Alpha King realized too late that the world had just drawn its battle lines, and placed Elara on the other side. Kael found her by instinct, not scent, not magic, not tracking skill. Something far older guided him, something he had no language for. The same force that pulled the tides. The same force that pulled souls. It drew him through the trees, down a slope slick with moonlight, to the hush of a river moving low and slow beneath the night. Elara knelt at the bank with Lumi tucked against her chest, exhaustion bending her shoulders forward. Her breath quivered with each inhale, as though even the air hurt. She didn't hear Kael approach at first, the river softened all sound, and she was too busy keeping herself from falling apart. When she finally sensed him, she didn't turn. She went still, too still, and Kael read every silent fear in that stillness. He lifted his hands slowly, palms open, showing her he came with no threat, no army, no expectations. Only truth. Elara, he said quietly, voice stripped of alpha authority. Let me help. She exhaled, long and weary. Help is what started all this. Kael lowered himself beside her, moving with the caution of a man approaching a wounded star. The river's glow cast soft blue across her cheek, revealing the sharp contrast of blood still drying at her temple. Her flank wound, the one pulsing silver before, was no longer bleeding, but it was inflamed, angry, and burning through her strength with every heartbeat. Lumi slept curled against her mother's ribs, tiny fingers knotted in Elara's shirt. Her small breaths lifted and dropped Elara's chest in that gentle rhythm only children could create, unaware of the world's sharp corners. Kael's eyes softened at the sight. She contained galaxies of fear, but Lumi held none of it. Elara, he whispered, you're hurt. I'll heal. Not before fever sets in. Then let it. Her voice broke on the last word. Kael didn't ask permission. He reached gently, his fingertips brushing the edge of her torn flank. She hissed and tried to pull away, but Lumi's sleeping weight pinned her in place. Kael steadied her, careful not to touch more than necessary. His breath hovered close to her skin, warm against the chilled night. This will sting, he murmured. You already do. The honesty of it lodged beneath his ribs. Still, he continued, washing her wound with water cupped from the river, wiping dirt and dried blood from her skin. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the unbearable tenderness of touching someone he tried for years to forget. Someone he thought dead. Someone he thought he was safer without. Elara, he said softly, I thought I'd lost you long ago. She kept her gaze locked on the river, refusing to meet the truth in his eyes. Maybe you should have. His jaw tightened, but he didn't stop tending her. Each pass of his fingers along her wound felt like he was drawing history back to the surface, things they had buried, things they pretended didn't matter, things too sharp to hold and too sacred to destroy. When he finished, he sat back, chest rising slower now, as if bracing himself. Elara. I need you to listen. Her eyes flickered toward him, hesitant, bruised with fatigue. But she listened. Kael stared at the river, unable to look directly at her as he spoke. I had a mate, he whispered. She died because of my decisions. Because I trusted the wrong people. Because I believed prophecy over my own instincts. Elara swallowed, a tight, painful sound. I lost her in a fire meant for me, he continued. A fire born from the same flame they now claim lives in you. So when I first saw your power, yes. I was afraid. Elara's breath trembled. But not of you, Kael said, finally looking at her. I was afraid of losing again. Afraid of prophecy repeating itself. Afraid of failing another woman He stopped. But the unfinished sentence hung between them like a spark waiting for breath. Elara looked down at Lumi sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, as if the world wasn't arguing over her existence. I didn't know, she murmured. About your mate. Nobody does, Kael said. Because I don't let myself say her name anymore. Grief became armor. Silence became safety. And prophecy, his voice roughened. Prophecy became a chain around my throat. Elara exhaled shakily. The prophecy says a woman of silver fire will destroy you. And yet, Kael said, leaning closer, here I am. She shook her head, eyes glistening. You should stay far away from me. You've run far enough. Her lips parted, but she couldn't form a response. The river whispered against the stones, carrying their silence away in small ripples. It's my turn, Kael said gently. Tell me the truth, Elara. Lumi's father, who was he? Her fingers clenched in Lumi's soft hair. Her shoulders tightened, bracing for judgment she had carried for years. He was a mistake, she whispered. Or. I thought he was. I thought giving in to him was weakness. I thought it made me foolish, vulnerable, unworthy. Kael's breath caught. Her voice fell even softer. I didn't know what I was to him. Or what he was to me. I still don't. Kael didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. The river glowed brighter, as if urging her to continue. It happened once, she whispered. One night, one moment, and then I was gone. So you hid the child, Kael murmured. Hid yourself. Hid from everything. She nodded. Kael's voice dropped to something painfully intimate. Did you ever think of coming back? Her laugh was soft and cracked. I couldn't even face my own reflection, Kael. How could I face you? Silence again. But this silence was different. It hummed with a raw truth Kael had tried to avoid acknowledging, one he now embraced with terrifying clarity. He reached out, and for once, she didn't pull away immediately. His fingers brushed hers lightly, just a touch. Just contact. Just enough to ignite something deep inside both of them. Her breath tangled with his. His heartbeat synced with hers. The world shrank to the distance between their mouths, to the warmth of shared air, to the fragile beginnings of a truth neither of them dared speak aloud. They leaned closer. Closer. And closer still. The kiss almost happened. Almost. Elara turned her face away at the last possible second, eyes squeezed shut, breath shaking with conflict. I can't, she whispered. Kael, I can't. How can I trust someone who could destroy me? Kael didn't flinch. He didn't reach again. He simply let the river carry the weight of his next words. Because I see you, he murmured, voice steady, sure, unshakable. All of you. The fear. The fire. The wounds. The strength. I see everything you want to hide, and I am not afraid. Her eyes slowly opened. The river reflected both of them, fractured, blurred, imperfect, yet unmistakably drawn toward one another. And for the first time, Elara didn't look away. The moment Kael allowed himself to exhale, believing the night could finally hold a fragment of peace, the world betrayed him. The stillness of the moonlit riverbank shattered like glass under a storm of armored boots and whispered commands. Shadows moved too fast, too coordinated, slipping between the trees and across the water's reflection with precise, lethal intent. Elara, Kael whispered, his voice a blade trying to cut through the sudden chaos. But it was already too late. In one fluid motion, the council had struck. Figures emerged from the tree-line, cloaked in authority and fury, their faces masks of discipline and betrayal. They didn't see a woman at the riverbank. They saw the prophecy incarnate. The threat to their control. The silver flame-bearer who had survived too long and walked too freely. Before Kael could reach her, a pair of strong hands grabbed Elara. One for her arms, one for her legs, as though she were no more than a rag doll to be displayed for judgment. Lumi shrieked, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the night, and clung to her mother, claws digging into her wet clothes, shaking with terror. Elara struggled violently, twisting, kicking, trying to break free, but the council's strength was reinforced by enchantments, words older than any of them dared speak of openly. Kael lunged forward, but a wall of warriors stepped between them. His growl tore through the air, shaking even the leaves on the riverbank, but it was met with disciplined resistance. They had anticipated him. They had planned this. Elara. His voice cracked, raw with disbelief and anger. But her eyes, wide, brilliant, betraying neither fear nor submission, locked onto his. And in them, Kael saw the first sting of betrayal settle. Kael, they're taking her, a young warrior whispered behind him. Fear trembled in the words, mirrored by Kael's own gut twisting into sharp, hot pain. Elara's voice rang out, crystal and defiant, cutting over the chaos, "You've all lied. You think this is justice, but it's murder wrapped in ceremony." A counselor stepped forward, staff raised, voice echoing across the water. "People of the pack, behold. The silver flame bearer. Mother of the one they say will bring ruin to us all. Witness the truth." Kael's heart froze in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to move. Every muscle strained to break through, to claim her, to protect her, but the council's wards held, the warriors stood, and the truth they screamed, was about to shatter everything. "They say she burned villages," another voice called, venom dripping from every word. "She is the monster who left nothing but ash." Elara struggled, voice rising over the chant of the pack. "Lies. Lies." Her hands blazed faintly, silver sparks dancing at her fingertips, unintentional, unrestrained, but the council dismissed it as confirmation of her guilt. Kael's mind raced. His people, the ones he had led, the ones who had followed him through every shadow and storm, were staring at her, chanting, demanding her execution. And for a brief, gut-wrenching moment, Kael hesitated. Because his Alpha's code and the weight of leadership told him he could not defy them. Because his heart, raw and bleeding, told him he could not let her die. And he froze, caught in the impossible balance between duty and desire, between loyalty and love. Elara's gaze swept across the pack, landing finally on Kael. It was accusation. It was fury. It was heartbreak incarnate. Her voice rose again, shaking the night. "Kael. You see. You hear them. And you stand there, silent. Silent as if my life is less important than your crown." A spark ignited, small at first, in her chest, trembling like a live wire. The wind picked up, tousling her damp hair, whipping across the river, and the faint silver glow in her palms intensified. Sparks leapt from her fingertips to the water, hissing, sizzling, leaving delicate smoke curling upward. "Enough," she whispered, and the whisper became a roar. The ground cracked beneath the counselor's feet, tiny fissures at first, spreading like veins across the riverbank. Rocks jumped, trees shuddered, and the glow from Elara's hands exploded outward, silver fire licking the edges of the river, sending ripples of light across Kael's face. The pack screamed. They stumbled. They ran back instinctively. Even the counselors' faces paled as their carefully constructed narrative began to crumble under the undeniable truth. This was not a woman to be subdued. This was a force of nature, a reckoning in human form. Kael surged forward at last, but not just to protect. He needed to remind her she wasn't alone. His hands found hers mid-air, steadying the storm of power she had released, anchoring her back to the ground. Lumi screamed again, frightened by the intensity, but Elara caught her, shielding her with the remaining force of her arm and willpower. The ancient ruins around them, the moss-covered stones, the broken walls, the remnants of a civilization that predated even the Alpha line, stirred. Energy flowed through them as if recognizing their heir. The silver flames raced along the cracks, illuminating hidden runes, awakening dormant magic in response to her fury. "Elara!" Kael shouted over the roar, gripping her waist and shoulder. "Control it. Focus it." She met his eyes, hair spilling over her shoulders like liquid silver, eyes blazing brighter than the moon above. I am not your sacrifice, she roared, voice carrying the weight of every insult, every lie, every fear she had endured. Kael could see it, feel it, the silver flame, wild and untamed, pulsing in rhythm with her heart. He let himself absorb it, anchor it, and add his strength to hers. The storm of energy coursing through her did not burn him, it called to him. A connection older than any counsel, older than any prophecy. They were not separate in this fight, they were one. The shadow Alpha emerged then, stepping through the mist that had rolled in from the river. Cloaked in darkness, teeth bared, eyes alight with malevolent intent. He reached for Lumi, thinking to seize her, thinking to claim the child and use her as leverage. And that was the final provocation. Elara's body glowed violently, the hair along her shoulders and spine shimmering like molten silver under the moon. Her palms erupted in arcs of blinding light, stretching outward to encircle the ruins, the river, the trees. Kael joined her, standing side by side, his own aura of alpha fire intermingling with hers, a protective shield that radiated fierce intent. The shadow Alpha faltered. He snarled, lunged, and the ground under him erupted as Elara's power surged. Rocks lifted, ancient stones vibrated, the river hissed as it boiled with silver light. Lightning arced unnaturally across the sky, a reflection of the silver fire cascading around them. Her voice rang across the battlefield, high, commanding, filled with every ounce of pain, defiance, and fury she had kept locked inside. I am not your curse. I am your reckoning. The shadow Alpha reeled, blinded and staggering. Kael moved to flank him, teeth bared, claws ready, but Elara didn't wait. She unleashed a pulse of raw, undeniable power that sent the shadow Alpha crashing into the ruins. Dust and stone sprayed into the night. The pack shrank back, awe and terror rooting them to the spot. Kael grabbed her wrist mid-pulse, steadying her again. Elara, don't lose yourself in the fire. Her chest heaved. Her hair smoldered like starlight. She looked at him, a flicker of unspent rage, and then a smile, fierce, victorious, primal. Kael mirrored it, and together they turned to the wreckage, the shadow Alpha gone, or at least, vanquished enough to retreat. The ruins shook one final time, stones settling, the wind dying down. The river reflected their silver flames, and for a heartbeat, everything was quiet except for the rhythm of their own hearts and the soft, trembling breaths of Lumi between them. They had won. But Kael knew, as he held Elara tight, that the world would not forgive such power. That the fight was far from over. Elara pulled back slightly, eyes still blazing. I am not theirs. I am not yours to give or take. I am me, she said, voice strong, unwavering, and Kael felt the weight of every prophecy bend around her. And they will learn, she whispered, the silver light fading slowly, that they do not command me. They do not dictate me. I am not your sacrifice. I am the reckoning. Kael's fingers tightened around hers, and he nodded, knowing this was only the beginning of the storm. The night trembled. The ruins pulsed. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the next threat stirred, watching, waiting. But for now, Elara had claimed her power. And Kael would never let her face the world alone again. The night had shifted. It was no longer just moonlight and shadow. The air itself hummed with power, as if the forest, the river, and the ruins themselves had awakened to bear witness. Elara's breath came in ragged, uneven bursts, each inhale sparking the faint shimmer of silver along her hair, her skin, the very air that surrounded her. The storm overhead had settled into a low, vibrating tension, clouds churning with expectation, lightning threatening yet restrained. Kael's hand remained locked around hers, but his gaze was sharp, alert, alpha instincts fully engaged, the silent promise of protection radiating from him like heat from a forge. Lumi clung to Elara's side, tiny and terrified, yet unbroken, her small hands gripping the folds of her mother's cloak. She didn't yet understand the magnitude of the forces converging around them, but she knew, instinctively, that her mother was the axis of the world tonight, and that Kael was her steadfast shield. A distant howl shattered the fragile silence, a deep, guttural sound that twisted the shadows into movement. The trees themselves seemed to lean closer, listening, warning, bending toward the approach of something greater. The Shadow Alpha, Kael murmured, teeth bared. His voice carried the weight of prophecy, of loss, of endless battles fought in the name of honor and survival. He's coming. Elara's eyes flashed silver in response, pupils dilated with both fear and defiance. She felt the pull of her power like a live wire threading through every nerve, every bone, every pulse. The silver flame was not a whisper anymore, it was a roar, ready to claim its rightful place in the world. She could feel the energy in her blood, in her hair, coursing outward in waves that made the leaves tremble, the river boil, the stones hum beneath their feet. Kael stepped in front of her, a barrier of alpha strength, his presence anchoring her chaos. "No matter what happens," he said, voice low and unwavering, "we stand together. Nothing touches her. Nothing touches you. I swear it." Lumi's small hand slipped into his, seeking safety, trust, and connection. Kael bent slightly, brushing a lock of her hair from her face, and in that quiet moment, even amid the approaching storm of magic and shadow, a fragile anchor of humanity held them together. Then, without warning, the Shadow Alpha emerged from the tree line. Cloaked in darkness, teeth glinting, eyes alight with a malevolence that seemed older than the forest itself, he advanced, and the air between them thickened, vibrating with dread and challenge. "You cannot hold her," the Shadow Alpha hissed, voice like gravel sliding over broken glass. "The child is mine to command. Her flame, her destiny, all of it belongs to me." Elara's hands rose instinctively, silver fire erupting like liquid light, arcs of energy stretching outward and lashing at the edges of the ruins. The river hissed, leapt, and shimmered with reflection, carrying the glow of her power. Trees bent and swayed, unwilling witnesses to the raw force she had finally claimed. "I am not yours," Elara roared, voice layered with fury, fear, and recognition of her own unstoppable strength. "I am not your curse. I am your reckoning." Kael moved at her side, claws unsheathed, aura flaring, eyes burning with the same silver fire that danced along her limbs. Together they formed a shield, a force of two alpha souls fused in purpose and love, against the Shadow Alpha who believed himself untouchable. The Shadow Alpha lunged, a blur of darkness and intent, claws arcing toward Lumi, who had frozen in terror. Elara's reaction was instantaneous. The air shimmered, expanded, and the silver flame exploded outward, lifting him, throwing him back, leaving scorched earth and cracked stone in his wake. He staggered, growled, and surged again, but Kael's presence and the intertwined force of their combined aura created a protective spiral around mother and child. The ruins themselves reacted. Ancient stones pulsed with power, lines etched centuries ago glowing beneath their feet. Moss and ivy cracked, lifted, twisted, as if the forest had recognized its chosen heir. Silver fire coiled around the pillars, tracing the symbols of long-forgotten rites, ancient magic echoing the power Elara had only begun to claim. Kael met her gaze, every movement synchronized. "Focus, Elara. Channel it. Control it." Her voice was a growl, wild and unbroken. "I am control. I am fire. I am." And the words became reality. The silver flame surged in a wave that tore through the clearing, rolling outward like molten silver, cracking the earth, igniting the air with arcs of living light. Lightning danced, not from the sky but from the energy she radiated, connecting river, ruins, and night in a storm entirely of her own making. The Shadow Alpha roared, staggering backward, his own darkness flickering against the brilliance she commanded. Kael struck at his flank with lethal precision, claws tearing through the shadows that had dared to approach, joining her power, reinforcing her aura with the unyielding might of his alpha essence. "Elara!" Kael called, voice a mixture of awe and warning. "Do not burn everything." She laughed then, a sound fierce, exultant, terrifying. "I will not be a pawn. I will not be a sacrifice. I am," she inhaled deeply, voice rising, carried on the wind. "I am the reckoning." The ground split beneath them in jagged lines, silver fire erupting from the fissures, lightning arcing along the jagged cracks. Trees ignited in harmless silver flames, bending to the will of her fury, wind screaming around them, carrying the sound of raw, elemental power. Even the river recoiled, swirling in eddies of silver, reflecting the chaos, the majesty, the unstoppable force that she had become. Kael moved as one with her, guiding, protecting, anchoring, yet never restraining. His claws carved paths, his aura flared with defiance, and together they pushed back the shadow Alpha, driving him through the ruins, into the river, and finally into retreat. The shadow Alpha stumbled, wounded, furious, unable to comprehend that a woman, and a child's protector, could wield such cosmic, destructive, and yet controlled power. Elara's chest heaved, every muscle trembling, every nerve alive with energy. Her hair floated in the aftermath of the storm like silver flames caught in wind. Her eyes glowed with undeniable authority, undeniable sovereignty. She stepped forward, voice carrying, steady, and victorious. I am not yours. I am not their chains. I am not a shadow to be feared or a tool to be used. I am fire. I am life. I am the reckoning. And this world will learn it, on my terms. Kael's hand found hers again, holding, grounding, anchoring. Lumi blinked sleepily, confused but unafraid, sensing safety radiating from the two figures who had just rewritten the night. Around them, the ruins calmed, silver fire fading into the shadows it had once illuminated. The storm overhead quieted, leaving only the low hum of energy that had been awakened, but not yet spent. The shadow Alpha's defeat was clear, yet Kael felt it in his bones. This was only the beginning. Other forces would come, drawn by her power, hungry to claim or destroy. But she had claimed herself. And tonight, Kael understood fully that there was no returning to the way things had been. Elara turned to him, breathless, trembling from exertion but alive with unbroken triumph. Kael. I'm everything they said I could never be. And yet. I am still me. He nodded, voice hoarse, fierce, proud. And I will be at your side, always. No counsel, no prophecy, no shadow will take you from me. Not ever. Her eyes softened, just for a heartbeat, allowing him to see the woman beneath the firestorm, the mother, the survivor, the lover, the Alpha in her own right. She lifted Lumi into her arms, her daughter cradled against her chest, and for the first time since the night had begun, there was quiet. The ruins settled, the river calmed, the night held its breath, and somewhere far beyond, destiny whispered, waiting for its next move. But for now, Elara had claimed her power. The silver flame was hers. Her name was hers. Her daughter's life, and her own, was hers. And Kael, standing at her side, knew that no force in the world could ever extinguish what they had become together, fire and shadow, light and steel, love and war, intertwined, unstoppable, eternal. The night settled like a held breath, the storm's echoes fading into distant rumbles as silver light still clung to the edges of the ruins. Elara stood on the cracked stones, hair floating like molten metal in the faint glow, eyes still blazing with the remnants of the power she had unleashed. Every muscle trembled, every heartbeat felt magnified, and yet, in her chest, beneath the fury and triumph, there was a hollow ache, a reminder that this victory was only temporary, that the world had not forgiven, had not forgotten, and had certainly not surrendered. Kael remained beside her, stance protective, shoulders rigid, claws flexed, but his eyes softened as they swept over her. Every line of tension, every flicker of doubt, every scar on her body, told him she had survived what no one else could. And still, she felt exposed, more vulnerable than ever. Not because of the enemy she had faced, but because she had revealed her soul, her heart, her power, her fire, to someone she loved. Kael, her voice trembled as she turned to him, eyes wide, shimmering with the raw honesty of someone who had been tested, stripped bare, and reborn. Do you still see me? Or just the fire they fear? He swallowed hard, letting the shadows of the ruins dance across his face. I see you, he said finally, low, unflinching. All of you. And I am not afraid. The words struck her with the weight of truth and the tenderness of surrender. But the world outside their bubble of silver light remained unyielding. Somewhere beyond the ruins, whispers moved, shadows stirred, and the pack, the council, the forces that had sought to manipulate and control her, were still watching. Waiting. Judging. Elara felt a pulse of fear and defiance rise simultaneously. This was the crossroads she had been warned about, the prophecy, the destiny, the path of fire and shadow, but tonight she had made a choice. She would not be sacrificed. She would not bend to their expectations. And yet, the question lingered in the charged night, would anyone else choose her side? She looked down at Lumi, small and sleeping peacefully in her arms, and a surge of protective love bolted through her. Every instinct, every ounce of power, every memory of betrayal sharpened her resolve. No one, no counsel, no shadow, no alpha, not even prophecy itself, would touch her child. Not while she drew breath, not while she commanded fire and storm alike. Kael's hand found hers again, gripping gently, grounding her. His eyes held hers, steady, unwavering. "They will have to face you," he murmured. "And if they try to harm her, or you, they'll answer to me." A low rumble vibrated through the air, the forest, the river, the ruins. It was not thunder. It was the world itself acknowledging the awakening of the silver flame, the reckoning that had just been unleashed. Every leaf, every stone, every current seemed to lean in closer, trembling with the recognition of something ancient and unstoppable. Elara lifted her head, breath fogging in the cool night air, and let herself feel it, the first genuine spark of freedom in her life. She had been hunted, betrayed, threatened, and yet she had claimed herself. She had stood against the impossible, against the lies, against the shadow alpha, and survived. Not broken. Not bent. Not a pawn. And now, she faced a new choice. A choice that would mark the night forever. Would the pack follow her, the council bend to her, the world recognize the power and authority she had earned? Or would they flee, fall, or strike against her? Her gaze swept over the ruins, lingering on the broken stones, the silver-tinged river, the faintly glowing traces of her own power. A single question whispered through the night, a challenge to everyone who had ever doubted her: who stands with her? Who dares to follow? Who chooses her side? Kael tightened his hold on her hand. "I do," he said. "I've always chosen you. And I always will." Elara's lips trembled, and for the first time, she allowed herself a soft, exhausted smile. "Then, we begin," she whispered. The wind picked up, carrying with it the echoes of voices far away, half hopeful, half doubtful, but none of them mattered tonight. Not yet. Tonight, the choice belonged to her. Tonight, she had claimed power, claimed her daughter, claimed the right to exist on her own terms. Then, as if the world itself held its breath, a faint glimmer appeared on the horizon, a shadow stirring beyond the trees, a whisper of movement, a flicker of eyes watching, calculating, waiting. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Elara tightened her grip on Lumi, feeling her pulse, feeling her heartbeat. She lifted her head, eyes blazing with determination, fire, and an unshakable sense of self. "If anyone comes for her, or me," she murmured, voice strong, lyrical, shaking the air around them, "they'll face the silver flame. And they will burn." Kael's jaw tightened, pride and desire and love all mingling in the storm of his chest. He leaned close, voice rough with emotion. "Then let them come. We'll show them what fire looks like when it refuses to be chained." The night stretched long and tense, holding the silence like a taut string. Every sound, the river's whisper, the wind through the ruins, Lumi's soft breathing, was amplified in the charged air. And the question lingered, hovering above them, dangerous and beautiful: who would choose her? Who would stand beside the silver flame and face the storm she had become? Elara's eyes scanned the dark horizon, not with fear, but with the fire of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to claim. And somewhere, far away, faint whispers began to rise. Some in awe, some in fear, all compelled. The reckoning had begun, and the world would soon learn there was no walking away from a woman who had claimed her power, her child, and her destiny. The camera of imagination lingers on her, glowing faintly in silver, hair flickering like molten light, eyes blazing with fierce intent. Kael stands unwavering beside her, ready to fight, to protect, to love. Lumi sleeps in the cradle of her arms, the future she carries unaware of its own legend. A low, lyrical voice drifts across the air, barely above a whisper, meant only for the heart's listening. Would you stand with her, or would you turn away? Would you fear her fire, or choose to follow it into the night? The ruins pulse faintly once more, as if acknowledging the challenge. And then a final, soft echo, gentle, but insistent, like the beat of a heart in the dark. If this story has touched your soul, if her courage has lit a fire in you, subscribe to Moonlight Desires, because here, we tell tales that burn. The wind picks up. The night leans closer. And somewhere beyond the shadows, destiny waits, breathless, watching. The night was no longer quiet. Even as the silver flames from Elara's power began to fade, leaving the ruins bathed in a ghostly glow, the air seemed thick with whispers, echoes of the past, warnings from the unseen, and the heavy weight of what was yet to come. The wind carried scents of wet earth, burned stone, and lingering magic, weaving them together like a tapestry of both triumph and dread. Kael's hand rested lightly on Elara's shoulder, a tether to the human world amid the raw, almost divine power she now wielded. Lumi, nestled in Elara's arms, stirred slightly, blinking against the shifting light, her tiny breath steady, oblivious to the monumental forces swirling around her. Kael's eyes swept the horizon, alert, unrelenting, aware that this victory, hard-won, explosive, irrevocable, was only a pause in a far greater storm. Elara, Kael murmured, voice low, hesitant, threaded with the tension of both pride and worry. We faced the Shadow Alpha tonight, but I can feel it, something else is coming. Something older, colder. Elara's gaze followed his, scanning the distant tree line where shadows pooled unnaturally, darkening the edges of the ruins. Her heart quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. The silver flame, though exhausted, still hummed faintly beneath her skin, a promise of strength she had yet to fully understand, a warning that the world itself was shifting beneath her feet. The world won't forgive what I've done tonight, she said, voice soft, almost a whisper, yet carrying the weight of absolute certainty. They'll send hunters, alphas, councils, maybe even the prophecy itself. They'll come for me. For Lumi. For the fire I carry. And I won't, she paused, inhaling sharply, eyes narrowing, silver sparks flickering faintly across her fingertips. I won't hide again. Kael's jaw tightened, muscles tense, but he did not interrupt. He had learned long ago that Elara's fire was both a shield and a blade. To speak over it would be to risk the storm. Instead, he stood beside her, a silent sentinel, alpha and lover, ready to face the consequences with her. The ruins began to tremble beneath their feet, a low, rhythmic quaking, subtle at first, then intensifying. Stones shifted, ancient symbols etched into the walls glimmering faintly in response to Elara's power. The ground's tremor was not random, it was alive, responding to her, reacting to her presence, acknowledging the awakening of a force that had slumbered for centuries. Elara, Kael's voice cut through the quivering air, urgent now. The silver flame, it's not just your power. It's older than anything I've known. It's tied to the pack, to the prophecy, to, he faltered, uncertainty creeping into the normally steady timbre of his voice. To forces we cannot even name yet. She exhaled, feeling the weight of his words settle like ice in her chest. She understood instinctively that her battle tonight, her declaration, her reckoning, was only a prelude. Something greater was stirring. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the forest, eyes gleamed, waiting. Some ancient alpha, some dark power older than the pack, older than her lineage, had felt the silver flames awakening and was moving toward them. A sudden rustle came from the tree line, subtle at first, then deliberate, almost ceremonial. A voice, low and chilling, drifted from the darkness, almost carried by the wind. She is not the only one. Kael's claws flexed, body coiled, every muscle a living weapon, as he stepped protectively in front of Elara and Lumi. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. The voice had power, authority, and menace. Whoever, or whatever, spoke had been watching, waiting, and now, they were emerging from the shadows to mark their presence. Elara tightened her grip on Lumi, her heart pounding, yet a spark of exhilaration flashed through her fear. This was the test she had been forged for, the storm she had been born to confront. Her silver eyes flickered in the dim moonlight, reflecting both challenge and defiance. Who are you?" she demanded, voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline, the electric hum of her still-burning power, and the terror that gnawed at the edges of her mind. Silence answered her first, then a low, almost reverent rumble, as if the forest itself were speaking through some unseen mouth. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, rolling across the ruins and the trembling river. "The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. And neither has the reckoning that will follow." The words settled on them like a frost, cold and heavy, yet thrilling in their inevitability. Elara felt the weight of destiny pressing down, and for the first time, she realized fully that the path she had walked, the betrayals, the battles, the fire she had unleashed, was only the beginning of a much larger journey. Kael's hand squeezed hers. "Whatever comes," he said, voice unwavering despite the chill crawling up his spine, "we face it together. This is ours. All of it." Elara's lips curved in a fleeting, fierce smile. Her heart thrummed with both terror and hope. The silver flame's glow flickered in her veins, a living pulse of energy ready to answer the call of the coming storm. Lumi stirred, eyes blinking sleepily against the silver light, unaware of the prophecy that surrounded her. And yet, Elara knew, this child, small and fragile, held more than she could imagine. Her innocence was a shield, her lineage a spark that would ignite destinies. The ruins pulsed faintly once more, echoing the tension in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a lone howl answered, deep and resonant, a summons, a warning, a herald of the battles yet to come. The forest seemed to lean closer, as though listening, waiting, acknowledging that the silver flame and the Alpha King who stood with her had just declared their presence to the world. Elara inhaled, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat match the quivering earth. Her lips parted, silver light flickering faintly along her hair and fingertips. "The reckoning isn't over," she whispered, voice soft, lyrical, yet carrying the weight of inevitability. "It's only beginning." Kael nodded, his gaze sweeping the horizon, muscles coiled like springs, aura radiating protective power and raw determination. "And whatever comes," he said, almost as a vow, "we will burn brighter than any shadow that dares approach." The camera of imagination lingers on the trio, mother, child, protector. Silver flames, moonlight, and lingering sparks of raw magic entwine around them. The ruins are quiet now, but their stillness is pregnant with the promise of chaos, of war, of destiny. A final whisper drifts through the air, carried by wind and shadow, just loud enough to echo in the hearts of the audience. She is not alone. The world is watching. The reckoning is coming. And then the night holds its breath. The screen fades into the ethereal glow of the ruins, lingering on Elara's silver eyes, Lumi's small hand in hers, Kael's protective stance, frozen in time, yet alive with possibility, tension, and the unspoken promise of stories yet to unfold. The words drift across the final frame, haunting and compelling. The silver flame has awakened. Will you choose her side, or stand in the shadows? A soft, lingering call to action closes the moment. If her fire stirred something in your soul, if her courage lit your own, subscribe to Moonlight Desires, because here, we tell tales that burn, and this is only the beginning.